Why was the book of Enoch removed from the Bible?
That is a
Good
really
question.
good question. Yeah, no, that's a good question. When it comes to some of the books that were maybe found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I know that some people have said that the Book of Enoch was in the Dead Sea Scrolls. However, if you look at Jewish history, no Jews have ever, or not no Jews, excuse me, most Jews, especially those from Israel, haven't recognized the Book of Enoch as a book that was ever part of the canon or part of Scripture, except for there's a group of Jews who came from Ethiopia and they recognize the Book of Enoch. Now, when it comes to the Book of Enoch, I wouldn't say so much that it's inspired or that it should be part of the Bible, because there are some books that the Bible refers to that are not in the Bible. So, like, for example, there's the book of Jasher. So, and like in 2 Samuel 1:18, as well as in Joshua 10:13, they refer to this book of Jasher. And this book, it must have some history, some extra stories, something else is in it. However, these books, or this book, isn't at all part of Scripture. And so, I think that kind of goes along with how we are today. There's some really great books out there that help us in our Christian walk, but they're not inspired. They're not part of, the canon or basically the Bible, because of some reason or another. And so, same thing with like the books in the Apocrypha. These are extra books that were kind of, some people include them, such as those in the Catholic Church, they include that as part of the Bible. And they have some additional interesting stories, but personally, I don't, I don't agree with the books in the Apocrypha. And what I'm going to say about the Book of Enoch is, it's a very, I haven't researched it too much, but based on what I've read of the Book of Enoch or read about it, I don't think it's inspired, because to me, some of the things that are in it, personally, I think are not in line with Scripture. And the thing with the Bible is, like it says in Isaiah, to the law and to the testimony, if it doesn't speak according to this word, it is because there's no light in it. And so if it isn't cohesive with the rest of Scripture, then that's kind of your red flag that, okay, maybe this really isn't part of the Bible. And so when it came to the book of Enoch, the first big section is something about the Watchers. And basically that's talking about certain types of angels. And it goes into why some angels fell, and some angels may be married with people from the time of Noah. And when I saw that, I had to say, I really think this is probably why it was not included in the Bible, because I don't think that is inspired. Jesus, when he said, there's the story where the Sadducees, they didn't believe in the resurrection. That's why they're sad, you see. And so anyways, they were tempting Jesus, and they were saying, a woman gets married and doesn't have kids. And, basically she marries the brother, and, they never have any kids. So in the resurrection, whose wife is she? And Jesus says, don't you know the Scripture? And he says, so the Scripture was not anything in the New Testament. There was no New Testament at that time. But Jesus refers to the Old Testament and says, basically when you die, this is in Luke chapter 20 and verse 30. 35. He says, but they which shall be accounted worthy shall obtain the world and resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage. And in verse 36, it says, neither can they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels, and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection. And so basically, Jesus says that, hey, like, don't you know the Scripture? Like, angels don't marry. They're not given in marriage. They can't procreate. There's something different about angels. They don't have that same relationship that we do with other people. Whereas in the book of Enoch, it talks about angels marrying people and making the super race, where, speaking of that verse in Genesis chapter 6, where it says, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair and married. But I really think that what it was talking about, the sons of God were God's holy, God's lineage from, the line of Seth, saw the daughters of men, like the seed of the serpent, the worldly women who were, probably looking, very glamorous, doing themselves up more, and, saw that they were fair and took them, intermarried basically God's people and people who are not of God. And, just like Jesus says, or in the New Testament, it says, don't be unequally yoked. And so that's what I think it's speaking about in Genesis chapter 6. I don't think that it's talking about this Naphtali, these angels that married with humans. I think that that's not inspired personally. And so that's why I don't think the book of Enoch is included in the Bible, because it doesn't align with scripture, in my opinion. I don't know, Jay or Wendy, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. And I think there's some misunderstandings at times what the book of Enoch is. And, some people probably think it actually was written by Enoch, and there's, mythology that, he saved a bunch of tablets, they were put in a cave to survive the flood, and that's how civilization was able to survive really quickly. I think Josephus is the one that writes that story. But the book of Enoch does not claim to be that. And virtually all scholars I know agree that the book of Enoch was written maybe about 200 years before Jesus came to the earth.
Yeah.
So it is a really new book. It's an intertestamental book. It came between the Old and New Testament, like as I think you were suggesting that, right, Tina? And
yeah, I agree though. I don't think I said it, but yes.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, you're right. It occurred at this weird time where, there was no scripture being written. So.
Yeah, because prophecy totally dried up. That was a dry spell of prophecy. There was between, was it Malachi and then John the Baptist, there was no prophets.
Yeah.
That was a huge time.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of the time of the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel chapter 9. It was just, that was, that time. And so sadly, some people maybe were looking for something, looking for the Messiah or looking for, something, when it wasn't time for it. And I think that's maybe a warning that we have to be careful of is, we can't be too anxious for something that we will accept anything and be deceived.
Exactly. And so is it an interesting book? It's interesting. Is it important in historical context? It is important because all Jews at that time probably knew the book of Enoch. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the Bible ropes it in at times, because those were concepts, language, things that those people were used to. But yeah, it's not speaking of the book of Enoch as a fact for everything within it. And I mean, it's just like if someone's looking back at our time and they see we're quoting Star Wars, and we use Star Wars to explain Bible concepts, things like that. Are we saying Star Wars is truth? Star Wars is right? No, but Star Wars is a fact of this period. Everybody knows Star Wars. So let us use it as example because everybody understands that. And that's kind of what the book of Enoch was at that time. Yeah, okay. Scott Webb. Oh, scroll down. Well, okay. So we have a comment from Scott Webb.
We have a few here, actually. So
but Scott has a point that I want to get to right away. So it's like Scott Webb mentions Michael Heiser. He says, he argues that watchers being angels who took the daughters produced Nephilim, but don't have conclusive support. But so like Michael Heiser is an extremely smart guy. I love watching his videos. And he's one of these guys, like he's writing so much. And he's definitely a big advocate for Book of Enoch, some of the concepts in it. But even Michael Heiser says, don't accept the Book of Enoch as doctrine. He says, no, he recognizes there's lots of inconsistencies with the Bible, recognizes nobody claims it to be an inspired book, dangerous at this time. So, you can always check out, he's doing annotated versions of the Book of Enoch right now, so you can learn more about the context that it provides for the Bible, again, so you understand what some of those people were thinking. But yeah, again, he doesn't even advocate that it should be a canonical book.
Yes, agreed. And I agree with your comment. And, Patriarchs and Prophets is a great book. And I think that it also helps us to understand exactly what you're saying. So anyways, are there more comments?
Oh, yeah. So yes. Scott Webb.
Yeah. So we have a question from Scott. It says, is the book of Jasher available like the book of Enoch to be read?
What I'll say, Scott, is I found it online, but I don't know if it's truly the Book of Jasher. If you look up the Book of Jasher online, I think there's a website called Ancient Tech, or something Ancient Text, something along those lines, or Scripture, or and it basically has every like religious book of every faith ever, and so they just try to provide people all resources from the Quran to the Bible to all sorts of religious texts. And so in their library they have the Book of Jasher, and I read part of it and I was like, I wonder if this is really the Book of Jasher or if this is, I don't know, somebody else's version or what. It was interesting, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know where exactly to find it. I don't know, Jay or Wendy, if you know any more about that.
I just think you do have a lot of these non-canonical books that maybe attempt to fill the gap, and so people might later on say, oh, we need to have a Book of Jasher. They write it and people think it's that, but yeah, I don't think that's.
And one of the important things to keep in mind too is that the Bible has been really well maintained because it is so inspired. I don't know all the specifics, but I know that with some of the other books that are purportedly, these texts that are kind of talked about here and there and questioned about, many of them, there are different versions that exist, and nobody really knows, or it's debated what is really the right version or not. And I know with some of them there are some significant differences between some of the texts that have been found out there. And so that, I think, is something that has to be taken into consideration as well, that, part of what is so special and sacred and unique about the Bible is that it has been so immensely well maintained over the years, and the books of the Bible have. And, we've seen that because of scrolls that have been found at different time periods that, that show that it's really well maintained. So, yeah.
Absolutely.